Tracy Sable tonight on EWTN News Nightly. The investigation continues. One lawmaker shares crucial information regarding finances sent from China to the Biden family. We have reaction. Budget battle. After top leaders meet to discuss the debt ceiling, America's economy hangs in the balance. We have the latest. Fighting back. A volley of airstrikes has begun in the Gaza Strip. We have the details. And brothers in faith. Pope Francis shares his weekly message from the Vatican with a special guest. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, new developments in the House investigation into President Joe Biden's family and a suspected influence peddling and business scheme involving foreign nationals from China. As EWTN News Nightly reported last week, the chair of the Oversight Committee, Representative James Comer, is heading the charge. Unveiled new information today. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest details. Eric.
Well, good evening, Trace. You know, Congressman James Comer tells me that he and his team have only been on the job for 4 months into this investigation, and they've already uncovered more than $10,000 going to Biden family members. Money sources he claims that the family tried to conceal. And last week I told you about 4 suspected family members involved. Well, now the Kentucky Congresswoman says that he has bank records for at least 9.
The Bidens have received millions of dollars from China. It is inconceivable that the president did not know it. The White House refuses to correct the president's statements, showing the president is now using the federal government to run interference for his families and his own role in these schemes.
Congressman James Comer says his team reviewed thousands of U.S. Treasury bank records for more than 20 companies, which he claims the Bidens and business associates Rob Walker and James Gilliar created while Joe Biden was vice president.
Walker used his company, Robinson Walker LLC, to receive money from foreign companies. He then sent the money to various Bidens.
So far, Republicans say they discovered more than $10 million in transactions from foreign nationals and companies with ties to China and Romania. Money that was funneled into smaller incremental payments to at least 9 Biden family bank accounts.
But let's be very clear. You have this many companies involved, this velocity of transactions, size of transactions. Like my colleagues have said, this is not how normal businesses operate.
These people didn't come to Hunter Biden because he understood world politics or that he was experienced in it or that he understood Chinese businesses. They wanted him for the access his last name gave them.
The White House is slamming the committee's investigation. Quote, Congressman Comer has a history of playing fast and loose with the facts and spreading baseless innuendo while refusing to conduct his so-called investigations with legitimacy. The White House also maintains that Joe Biden has never been involved in his son's business dealings. To that, Republicans say if these were legitimate payments for business, then show us the books.
I think the American people understand that this stinks, and I think they appreciate what we're doing here.
In a separate investigation, Congressman Comer says the FBI had till today to hand over an FBI file that a whistleblower said links President Biden to a criminal scheme involving money for policy decisions during his vice presidency. Now, in other news, New York Congressman George Santos, whose falsehoods have become a scandal, surrendered to authorities today after being charged with 13 counts of fraud and financial crimes. He pled not guilty in court, and he also said that he will not resign from Congress. And California Senator Dianne Feinstein is back in Washington. She was hospitalized for shingles back in February. Democrats now have a full strength in the Senate. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden flew to New York today to turn up the heat on House Republicans over the debt ceiling, which has reached a stalemate. And all eyes on the calendar as a catastrophic debt default could happen as soon as June 1st if an agreement is not reached. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. I was at the White House last night when top congressional leaders met with President Joe Biden to discuss the debt ceiling. And when it was over, the lawmakers came outside and briefed reporters and basically told them not much progress was made. However, later this week, another meeting between Capitol Hill leaders and President Biden is set to go. In Westchester County, New York, President Joe Biden makes his case that lawmakers should lift the nation's borrowing authority without any strings attached.
Because if we default on our debt, the whole world is in trouble.
And with debt talks showing minimal progress,
they're doing the best, to the best of my knowledge, what no other political party has done in the nation's history. They're literally, not figuratively, holding the economy hostage.
Outside the West Wing last night, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy told reporters,
I'm hoping that the next 2 weeks are different. I'm hoping this president understands, as the leader of this nation, that you can't sit back and hold the country hostage. You can't be so extreme in your views that you're not going to negotiate.
As the debt ceiling debate plays out, the government reports today that consumer prices in the United States rose again in April. Further declines in inflation are likely to be slow and bumpy. Even with price pressures rising in April, the latest data did provide some evidence of cooling inflation. Grocery prices fell for a second straight month. And at the southern border, migrants loaded on the buses in El Paso, Texas this morning. In just hours, Title 42 restrictions come to an end. The restrictions allowed the U.S. to quickly expel migrants at the southern border for the last 3 years.
We are clear-eyed about the challenges we are likely to face in the days and weeks ahead, which have the potential to be very difficult. Our plan will deliver results, but it will take time for those results to be fully realized. And it is essential that we all take this into account.
Now, tomorrow, Secretary Mayorkas, who you just saw there, will appear here at the White House press briefing room to take questions from reporters. Also, former President Donald Trump appears on CNN tonight for a town hall in New Hampshire, a day after he was found liable in a civil case for sexually abusing an advice columnist decades ago. Former President Trump called that verdict a disgrace, and he promises to appeal. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the governor of Vermont signed a measure today to protect access to medication abortion. The first in the nation law ensures access to mifepristone, even if the FDA withdraws approval of the abortion pill. The so-called SHIELD bill also protects abortion businesses which provide the drug. Lawmakers in Missouri have passed a ban on so-called transgender health care. A pair of measures passed today would also forbid biological boys from participating in girls' sports. The state's Republican governor is expected to sign both laws. The Archdiocese of Baltimore is set to face several lawsuits over clergy sexual abuse. An attorney says that he will bring the civil cases soon. Last month, the state's attorney general released a report finding around 150 priests sexually abuse hundreds of children in the Archdiocese. Well, drug overdose deaths in the United States are rising and have been on the upswing for the past 2 decades. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in 2021, there were more than 106,000 drug overdose deaths in the U.S. Moreover, drug overdose death rates were higher than the previous year for all age groups 25 and over. So, what is being done to tackle the issue and help save lives, and could faith play a role in this battle? Well, joining us now to talk more about this is Gary Blackard, President and CEO of Adult and Teen Challenge, a Christian group focused on addiction and recovery. Gary, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it. We mentioned the startling number of overdose deaths in the United States, but sadly, the number of people who have substance use disorder or addiction is really much greater than that. Talk to us more about that and this epidemic that just seems to be getting worse every year.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It absolutely is getting worse every year. SAMHSA just reported 46.6 million people have self-reported as having alcohol or substance use disorders last year. And so when you think about 46 million Americans that have identified as having a use disorder, we have a major problem in our country. And you just mentioned the overdose deaths, but in reality, if you add alcohol or any of the other drugs to the number of deaths there, we're well over 225,000 deaths per year.
And Gary, what do you think is causing so many people these days to use and abuse substances? And give us maybe a sense of some of who these people are.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, our profiles are different from across the nation, and frankly, they impact every area of life, all generations. and those in different types of work, et cetera. And so what we are seeing is there's a struggle right now with a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning in life, a sense of identity. There's a huge problem with identity in the United States. There's a pain and a trauma problem that people are trying to medicate. And so what we're seeing for the first time in our ministry, and we've been around 65 years, is the levels of trauma and the levels of mental health concerns are skyrocketing. And as a result, people are turning to alcohol and drugs for those issues. And we're seeing it with older men, older women, mothers, fathers, adolescent boys and girls across the board. We're seeing these mental health concerns and this lack of meaning and purpose in life.
Yeah, it really is sad and really spans the gamut. Gary, what can be done to help folks who are suffering from a substance use disorder, be it drugs or alcohol, and how can faith play a role in recovery?
A lot can be done. And I think people, first of all, need to realize we need to get rid of the stigma, especially within the church. We need to get rid of the stigma of what addiction is, what alcohol and substance use disorder is. Listen, Christ came to heal the sick, heal diseases, and forgive sins, and cleanse us all from sin. So it doesn't matter what the views are. It matters how can we show the love of Christ to those suffering with addiction. And typically, you need to attack it from 4 different elements of life: biological, psychological, sociological, and spiritual. And that's where we believe the power is a faith-based approach, ensuring that people suffering with addiction get their spiritual lives in order just as much as their physical and psychological lives in order. And we believe Christ is the answer for all of those elements. And so we look to help people build their identity, understand that their pain can go away and be transformed. And really, through group counseling, through individual counseling, through work therapy, a variety of different programming, we believe that the holistic or comprehensive approach is by far the best approach. And we need to be at the table with the government at the federal level, all of the state levels. We need to be at the table. The faith-based institutions need to be at the table so that we can attack this collaboratively together to help these Americans struggling with addiction.
Yeah, it's so important. It's important work that you're doing. We're almost out of time. Gary, but quickly, I know that tomorrow you're going to be taking part in a substance abuse summit. Tell us more about this gathering, why it's important, and what you hope comes from it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's the Hope and Recovery Summit. Why Faith Matters is the theme. We have partners and speakers from the Mayo Clinic, from Duke University, American Bible Society, Salvation Army, Citygate Network, just a variety of different organizations coming together to have a series of talks on how faith can help in the addiction crisis and how we want to come alongside and engage with federal agencies and state agencies. So that's what we're doing tomorrow at the Library of Congress. We're very excited about it. We're also going to be talking about a long-term partnership with Salvation Army and Citygate Network, where our 3 organizations are looking at the possibility of measuring evidence-based outcomes together, where all 3 of us would look to measure not only the standard evidence-based outcomes, but faith-based outcomes, so that we can show the world that faith does matter.
Well, Gary, thank you for taking the time to speak with us about all of this. We appreciate it. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you very much.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including protecting religious freedom. We take a look at a new study highlighting the countries of concern and those that some say should make the list. And brothers in Christ. Pope Francis holds his weekly talk at the Vatican with a special guest. Military leaders from the United States and the Philippines met today amid the heightened threat from China.
We all both share the same interests about peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. That's what this relationship is all about.
General James McConville of the U.S. Army spoke of the strong relationship between the countries. The U.S. has had a larger military presence in the Philippines in recent months. Beijing has spoken out against the alliance. Palestinian militants launched rockets from Gaza today. This following Israeli airstrikes yesterday that killed 3 Palestinian militants and 10 civilians. Palestinians pledged to retaliate after yesterday. Israel says that it is prepared for further escalation. Officials in Pakistan say the arrest of the country's former prime minister earlier this week was not political.
This is an arrest which is not motivated by any political victimization. This is an arrest which was not done at the behest of the government. It is an arrest that was made by the National Accountability Bureau, the institution that is supposed to look after corruption cases in the country.
Officials also say there is widespread evidence of corruption against Imran Khan. His supporters held protests throughout the country. They say he's being targeted because he is the opposition leader, and government forces are cracking down on their opponents. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom released its annual report last week detailing the increase of religious violations around the world. The main focus of the report is to highlight countries that violate religious freedom and to bolster U.S. efforts to advance freedom of religion in those countries. 12 countries, including Nicaragua and Nigeria, were designated countries of concern. 11 countries were listed as the State Department's special watch list. The study is based on information collected in 2022. And joining me now is Jason Poblete, president of Global Liberty Alliance. Jason, great to be with you today. Let's talk more about this report. Not only is Nigeria and Nicaragua listed here, but so is Cuba. For those who may not be aware, what makes that country one of particular concern?
Thank you for having us. And yes, Cuba finally is on that list. It's something that should have happened a while ago. And to understand what's happening in Cuba and why it's on this list, an important list that hopefully will open the door to sanctions and no more waivers on sanctions, which was included in that report. Cuba is a totalitarian police state, and it has baked into its system culturally eliminating religious life from all of Cuban society. So they're a socialist country on their way to communism. And within the Communist Party system, all the way down to the block level, you have a system in place that's designed to target people of faith. And if you toe a certain line, they tend to leave you alone. However, the moment you steer away from the party line and what they say, and I'll share with you one example now, what they say is acceptable religious behavior, there's an office called the Office of Religious Affairs, which is part of the Cuban Communist Party. It's very similar to what they did in Stasi, the Stasi did during the Cold War over in East Germany and other countries that had similar repressive systems. And everything from 3 people coming together to study the Bible to attendance of certain religious observances in, for example, non-Catholic churches. If you are part of another denomination and you are starting an independent church, if you don't register with the party, that's considered counter-revolutionary. They can come after you and they target you. And the reason why it's important to have it in this report is that it sets it out there not only for our government to set the right tone and the right message on policy, but also for other governments, we hope, to step up and do their part to ensure that religious freedom is an important part of their foreign policy in places like Cuba and others.
I want to get to Nicaragua now. It's also a country of particular concern. And as you know, there have been numerous attacks against the Catholic Church. In fact, a recent report by researcher and lawyer Martha Patricia Molina was titled Nicaragua, a Persecuted Church. She documents over 500 attacks perpetrated by the Ortega regime in just the last 5 years. What more do you know about this? And what can you tell us about this rise of anti-Catholicism in socialist-controlled nations in Latin America?
It's an excellent report. I think folks should take a look at it. And the Global Liberty Alliance has also been documenting cases, probably for several years, not at that intensity because there are great groups like that one doing that work there. But it's no different than what we're seeing in socialist Cuba. And it's the same sophisticated Cuba, by the way, created system that's designed to keep people of faith in check. The biggest challenge, by the way, in Latin America to socialism and communist governments is the Roman Catholic faith, the people of faith, the believers, because at the root of all of this, as you know, is culture. They're trying to change the culture, and they use regulations, they use the color of law, they use systems that may seem perfectly fine out here, but ultimately what they are doing is waging a culture war. Their goal is to eliminate the Catholic Church if they can. In fact, some of them will say that's impossible. I say it's not impossible. I say if we don't check them the way these reports do, the way civil society does, there's going to be problems. The Nicaraguan Catholic Church has been under attack for quite some time. A few years ago, we reported a very horrible incident that happened in several places where they were even attacking tabernacles. They were torching tabernacles. So there were people going into churches and trying to desecrate the churches, the Blessed Sacrament. And it's something that we saw as an outlier. Unfortunately, it was the beginning of what we continue to see, intense persecution. And our hearts and prayers are with the people in Nicaragua because they are going also through a very difficult time. And it's not just there, though. It's in several other countries. Yeah, indeed. And Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but very important conversation, and hope to pick it up with you again at some point. Thank you for having us. Mm-hmm. Well, up next on EWTN News Nightly, strengthening ties. Pope Francis celebrates a special anniversary during his general audience, plus preparing for a jubilee. The Vatican is already making plans for a special event. Pope Francis shared the stage at his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican today. He held the gathering with the head of the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria.
الله الآب ونعمة الابن الوحيد وشركة وموهبة.
Pope Tawadros II sat on the platform with Pope Francis. They were meeting to honor the 50th anniversary of the renewal of relations between the two churches. Pope Francis says the two leaders call each other on the phone, send greetings, and, quote, have never quarreled. Our preparations are well underway for the Jubilee year 2025, an event expected to bring tens of millions of pilgrims to Rome. A press conference at the Vatican outlined the program and a couple of new features for the faithful. EWTN Vatican Bureau Journalist Benjamin Crockett has more.
Vatican officials unveiled the details for the 27th Jubilee, a historic event which takes place every 25 years. The upcoming Jubilee will be held from December 2024 to January of 2026. At a press conference, details of events, goals, and plans for the Holy Year were shared with the public. The precise date of its opening awaits the announcement of the papal bull expected on May 9, 2024, on the Feast of the Ascension. The ordinary Jubilee will begin with the opening of the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica in December of 2024. Rome is preparing to host more than 30 million people, an incredible number for which the organization has been working for a long time already.
We are waiting a lot of people, but the most important thing is that we would like that they can live a spiritual experience. The Jubilee is, first of all, a pilgrimage to the tomb of Peter and Paul. And a lot of pilgrims coming to Rome, they need also to be welcome, but to be also inserted in a spiritual experience.
Archbishop Rino Fisichella, pro-prefect for the section of new evangelization of the Dicastery for Evangelization, explained how numerous processes have already been initiated by the Dicastery through 4 organizational commissions: pastoral, cultural, communication and ecumenical, as well as a technical committee. The commissions are dealing with different aspects, especially that which concerns the part of infrastructures, security, but also transportation and volunteerism, all that is necessary for the smooth running of the Jubilee.
Pope Francis appointed the Dicastery for the Evangelization, thinking that the Jubilee will be a very profound occasion for evangelization. First of all, we need to speak about hope, and hope is the content of the gospel.
Also, at the press conference, the new 2025 Jubilee website was presented. The new portal is already available in 9 languages and presents some of the most important content for learning about the Jubilee events, including information on the Holy Door of St. Peter's and other Roman basilicas. An app will also be available for pilgrims, and from fall 2023, the Jubilee social media pages will also be active. Through the website and app, it will be possible to access a platform to register and obtain the Pilgrim's Card. Through the Pilgrim Card, the faithful will be recognized as an official pilgrim of the Jubilee. At the beginning of June, the Pilgrim Center for the Jubilee will be inaugurated, where faithful and tourists passing through Rome will be able to ask for information on how to participate, become a volunteer, or organize their own pilgrimage in 2025. In Rome, Benjamin Crockett, EWTN News Nightly.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.